Excited to have you with us, Tracy Zimmerman, the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. What is the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation, other than a mouthful?
It is indeed a mouthful. We are a nonprofit organization. We focus on children ages birth to 8 and ensuring that we have the policies in place that can support their optimal development. So we look at health and development, supported and supportive communities and families, and high quality birth to 8 learning environments. And we really try to bridge systems so that we can really get to what is best for young children.
You've been doing a lot of work on pre-K in North Carolina. Tell us why this has been so important to your work.
Well, there's so much evidence about why pre-K is good for young children and why it's an important piece of that birth to 8 continuum. So we know in our programs in North Carolina, there's research that shows young children who participate have higher third grade reading and math scores. They're much less likely to be placed in special education, and that those benefits continue as they age. So it's really important as we're supporting young children's development that they're having those optimal experiences that they need.
We've been focusing a lot on pre-K in Forsyth County, but tell us what's happening in other communities in the state of North Carolina. What are you seeing on the ground?
There is so much innovation happening in communities. So everywhere from Buncombe County to Mecklenburg County and across the state, Wake County. So you have communities that are coming together and saying we need to be doing more for our young children. And so they're looking at how can we invest from our county budget? How can we use property taxes? How can we use other economic investment funds like in Buncombe County? Mecklenburg County is committed to a 6-year program where they really want to be offering universal pre-K to all their 3- and 4-year-olds. And so they're making a down payment on that with a sales tax increase. So communities are really thinking about, they know how important these early investments are. They know that their communities are dependent upon what's happening with their young children, and are they having that strong foundation for success, which is why they're looking to invest.
Tracy, there are going to be people watching who say to themselves, I wish my community was doing more to ensure pre-K access to children. How do you advise them to get started?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I want to back up and say that's true all across the state. We just completed a voter poll of North Carolinians. So it's a bipartisan poll. And what we found is outrageous numbers in terms of support for expanding investments in Smart Start and NC Pre-K. So across the board, across the political spectrum, it's over 80% of support for those expansions. So everybody's looking towards that. So I don't want to diminish that the state has an important role in providing some of that funding and support and capacity building. But communities, as you know, can come together and look at what are some of our local revenue sources that we might be able to generate. How can we support the expansion of this in our communities? And by bringing together really their business leaders, their educators, their early childhood folks, healthcare, it really takes that whole child perspective to get people bought into figuring out how do we do this for more kids.
Talk to me a little bit about the business community, because we've seen nationally and on the state level and certainly in communities that business leaders have been some of the most active leaders in these conversations around pre-K. Why?
Yes, business leaders get this. They get it for 2 reasons. They get it for their future workforce. There's an anticipated skills gap that they see growing. They've experienced it already. Even back during the recession, when I talked with business leaders, they commented that they had jobs that they could not fill. And they will say that that's because they can't find people with the right skill set, with the right social emotional skills. And we know too much from brain science now to know that if you want those skills and you want to develop them strong, you have to start early. So the research is there, the brain science is there, and they get that. And they know to build that future workforce, they have to invest now. And then the other piece is that their employees want to know that they are living in thriving communities, that they have good places for their kids to go when they're young. And so it's a benefit now as well.
Let's look outside of North Carolina for a second. If you were going to advise the community to look to bright stars nationally, communities that have really organized themselves around pre-K and implemented high-quality programs, give us a couple of places to look.
Well, I have to start by saying we really are a leader. Our pre-K program is one of the best in the country. And so there are a lot of folks actually looking in North Carolina about that. In terms of specific communities, I would say San Antonio is one that has done tremendous work in bringing the community together and really figuring out how to support and invest in universal pre-K for their community. Philadelphia has gone a whole different direction, and they have what folks call a sugar tax, which is funding the expansion of early childhood programs. We have on our website actually case studies from across the country that highlight how communities are coming together and how they're thinking about expanding those investments.
So you mentioned that resource on your website, and if I recall correctly, you also have information on your website about funding pre-K, is that right?
That's correct. That's, if you go to our website, we have a financing toolkit that looks at both what are different funding mechanisms as well as case studies that others are using. And then we certainly provide background on where are we as a state in our funding.
Pre-K is amazing. I think there is a lot of agreement about the benefits of pre-K, but it isn't a magic wand and it doesn't solve all challenges.
No.
So talk to me a little bit about the limitations of pre-K.
So I think what I would say is that it's not that there are limitations in pre-K, it's that it's 1 year. And children don't develop magically in 1 year. We know so much now from brain science that from the moment they're born, their brains are developing so rapidly, particularly in those earlier years. And all of that development is forming a foundation for strong learning, strong health. These things are all built in at very, very young ages. And so it's much easier to build a strong foundation than it is to try to make up for that later.
So then help me understand what advice you give to communities who are focused on expanding pre-K as to what needs to happen in the early years, and then equally important, what needs to happen in the years following the pre-K experience.
Such a good question. So before we start looking at pre-K, we really need to think about where are our infants and toddlers across the state. Many of our communities do not have high quality infant and toddler child care. And we know that the majority of our kids are not in licensed care. So where are our kids and how are we supporting those who are creating the environments for them that will determine their development? So we really need to look at both access to high quality childcare and teachers, and then we need to look at how do we support parents in doing their best job. I know when I was a new parent, I would have loved some additional information from
Indeed.
folks to do my job better, and I think when you talk with parents across the state, they would benefit from that. And there are several research-based programs and practices that support that. After pre-K, it's only as good as the systems that they go into. And so we need really strong both transition programs, and what that means is how do we best prepare our schools for all children and what's happening in those early grades. You know, for a few years back, particularly under No Child Left Behind, there was an incentive to push some of our teachers who weren't producing the best test scores down because those grades aren't tested. And so we really need a good concerted effort to look at instructional quality in our K through 3 years.
Tracy Zimmerman, we are all so lucky to have the resource of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you.